He may have been impeached, but Donald Trump hasn't let that diminish his confidence, today dismissing the judgment as a hoax.
Impeached and now emboldened, Donald Trump makes it known he's still inside the Oval Office.
Well, I don't feel like I'm being impeached because it's a hoax, it's a setup, it's a horrible thing they did.
The mood very different at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue.
Seems like people have a spring in their step because the president was held accountable for his reckless behavior.
Having overseen the impeachment, the Speaker is now delaying sending the articles to the Senate, where Donald Trump will face trial and Republicans are likely to quickly dismiss the charges.
American military muscle in the Mediterranean. We're on the aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman, now watching a growing Russian threat. Russian submarines testing cruise missiles, Russian warships this week staging exercises near Syria.
Russia is back in the Mediterranean with a vengeance, but the message from this carrier and its aircraft couldn't be clearer. We're watching you 24/7.
The US mission to deter Russian aggression.
There's a cost and a risk to bad behavior, and we won't allow it.
Above the carrier, US patrol planes.
They are looking above all for Russian nuclear-powered submarines, well armed and increasingly well hidden.
It's been announced by Buckingham Palace that Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has been taken to hospital, and we can go now to our correspondent Rhiannon Mills for more. Rhiannon, what do we know?
Very short statement that's just been released by Buckingham Palace. I will read that to you in full now. It says the Duke of Edinburgh travelled from Norfolk this morning to the King Edward VII Hospital in London for observation and treatment in relation to a pre-existing condition. The admission is a precautionary measure on the advice of His Royal Highness's doctor. Now, it's worth reminding ourselves that Prince Philip is 98 years old. He's been spending a great deal of time recently in Norfolk.
With the latest spending bill, Congress is using billions of taxpayer dollars to build border walls in other countries. One America's Pearson Sharp explains how Americans are financing border security projects across the Middle East.
While Democrats denounce Americans' demands for a barrier along our southern border, they're more than happy to spend billions of our own dollars paying for other countries to build border walls. With the latest spending bill, Congress is offering the tiny Middle Eastern nation of Jordan over $7.3 billion to, quote, enhance the ability of the armed forces and to increase security along its borders. On top of that, another $500 million is going directly to help Jordan build more barriers on its borders. In addition, U.S. taxpayers are forking over another $1.2 billion for border security projects in Lebanon, Egypt, and Tunisia.
The Defense Ministry highlighted plans to implement its reform plan aimed at modernizing the military. It involves acquiring advanced weapons and boosting defense systems.
The Ministry of National Defense said Friday it's enforcing its midterm plan previously unveiled in August aimed at strengthening South Korea's self-reliance to better respond to evolving missile threats. The ministry says it reflected in its 5-year budget plan a 10.3% incremental yearly increase, amounting to $90 billion US. Among that figure, more than $29 billion will be allotted into acquiring state-of-the-art weapons systems, such as long-range surface-to-air missiles, as well as boosting surveillance and anti-missile systems.
Fresh clashes have erupted in India over a controversial citizenship law for minorities, despite government efforts to push back. Tensions boiled over in Lucknow when police stopped hundreds of people on their way to a planned protest.
And this comes after a day of violence that claimed at least 3 lives, bringing the death toll to 9. Thousands took to the streets nationwide, many defying temporary bans on public gatherings.
Water cannons were deployed in at least one city. Authorities have detained hundreds of people so far.
The protests in Delhi today have been rather peaceful. What we saw yesterday were massive protests organized all across New Delhi by a variety of groups, civil society groups and political parties alike. But today there was a massive protest at Jama Masjid, a rather iconic location.
Well, there's been a shooting in Moscow near the headquarters of Russia's main security service, the FSB, leaving at least 3 people dead. Now, that's taken place just in the last couple of hours. You're watching live pictures now from the streets of Moscow, near where that happened, where the streets have been cordoned off. Our correspondent, Step Vasson, is there for us in Moscow. Step, I know this happened very recently, but what do we know at this stage? We're hearing that at least one of them was an officer.
Yes, the latest reports we're now seeing, and these are media quoting the FSB press service. They say that inside the FSB headquarters in Lubyanka, the main building, the attack started. 3 attackers came in, and 2 have been killed during a shootout with allegedly other FSB officers.
That the International Criminal Court is preparing to investigate alleged war crimes in the Palestinian territories. To recap, the ICC's chief prosecutor says this could include charges against Israelis or Palestinians. Fatou Bensouda says she's satisfied that war crimes have been or are currently being committed in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the court has no jurisdiction to investigate inside the Palestinian territories. Well, let's take you to Twitter, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the investigation would, quote, turn the tribunal into a political weapon against Israel and against our country. We want to turn Jews living in their homeland into war crimes. It's absurd in every possible way.
This week, South Korea announced its national strategy on artificial intelligence, and a large part of that plan is to foster specialists in the field through university programs, and also to bolster cooperation between industry and academia.
This university lab in Seoul is where future smart technologies are conceived through algorithms. Led by Professor Chang Junyeok, a world-renowned researcher in signal processing, the lab develops artificial intelligence solutions for voice assistants in smart speakers and automobiles, as well as wearable health devices. It's one of the few research centres in the country that has been nurturing graduate students in AI, providing them the chance to work with global companies like Samsung, LG and Hyundai Motor.